Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Earl.
And I'm Will Garcia.
And together we're the Hoops Guys. And today we're going to be continuing our 2014-2015 NBA season previews by discussing the team I call the Zombie Sonics, but everyone else kind of knows them as the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Zomics! They had a pretty alright year last year, finishing 59-23. That got them the second seed, where they kind of became Spurs fodder, losing in the conference finals in 6 games.
To be fair, everyone last year in the playoffs was Spurs fodder.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. But while the team didn't reach the heights that it aspired to, Kevin Durant hit some pretty high individual heights himself.
Absolutely did.
He got the first of what will likely be many MVP awards over the course of his sure-to-be Hall of Fame career.
Mm-hmm.
Given a per-game stat line of 32 points, 7.4 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.7 blocks a game on 50.3, 39.1, and 87.3 shooting splits for a total true shooting percentage well above 60%.
Yeah.
And he did this on 20.8 field goal attempts a game.
Nuts.
There's no question that he was very well deserving of this MVP award. And his MVP acceptance speech, I don't know about you, Will, but that was the best MVP acceptance speech I've ever heard. The best award speech I've ever heard. It was simply a masterclass in class, gratitude, teamwork, and leadership. He singled out every single player on the team other than himself for praise. He praised the ownership, the GM, the coach, his family, especially his mom, who is the real MVP. So shout out to Katie's mom.
Who won that MVP award?
Yes. And it perfectly encapsulated everything that's great about KD. And I think it showed why Kevin Durant is really a model franchise player in every single way.
Yeah, as basketball fans, we are so lucky. I say this all the time. You know, fans in other sports might get the Ray Rice thing going on. We get Kevin Durant and LeBron.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfect. Kevin Durant, such a good dude. I thought he was going to, thank the janitors in that speech.
He might have. Maybe they were giving him the, cut for time.
Yeah, I don't know. One guy who's not a janitor, but did get singled out in that Kevin Durant MVP speech was Russell Westbrook. And Russ had a bit of a down year, not in terms of performance, but in terms of staying healthy.
Yep.
He missed basically half the season, 36 games. But the Thunder didn't really see that big of a dip in production, which might be why Kevin Durant won that MVP award.
Yes.
They finished 7th in offensive rating. And that's not a knock on Russ, but his teammates, like I mentioned, stepped up, and that's KD, that's Ibaka. Reggie Jackson gets a little bit of love there, too. And this all helped lead the Thunder to a 6th-place finish in effective field goal percentage, a 4th place, or tying for 4th in actual points per shot. Shout out to Ian Levy from Nylon Calculus on that one. And they converted shots well, which is essentially what those mean. And that shouldn't come as much of a surprise because they finished 9th in the paint field goal percentage, 2nd at mid-range field goal percentage, and 8th in a tie for above the break three-point percentage. And then they also continued to get to the line very well, ranking 5th in free throws per field goal attempt. Russ and KD are both very good at that.
Yeah, and the Thunder were also very strong defensively, ranking 6th in defensive rating. On offense, they converted their shots well, like Will just told you. And on defense, they did the inverse. They didn't let their opponents finish shots well. They were tied for 6th in defensive effective field goal percentage, 7th in defensive actual points per shot, 2nd in restricted area defensive field goal percentage, 5th in the paint defensive field goal percentage, tied for 6th in mid-range defensive field goal percentage, and they were 7th in corner 3 defensive field goal percentage. So, one sec.
Yeah.
They did a good job of not letting opponents convert their shots.
Yep.
On top of that, they forced turnovers very well, winding up tied for 10th in defensive turnover percentage. Mm-hmm. And they prevented second chance opportunities for opponents, cleaning the defensive glass to the tune of a 9th place ranking in defensive rebound rate.
Yeah, having said that, my mom always told me that if you want your ice cream, you have to eat your vegetables. Or if you're a weirdo like vegans like Josh.
I love vegetables.
Yeah, not a big ice cream
And
guy.
I hate ice cream, actually, although that was because of an all ice cream diet when I was younger.
Yeah, it was some weird hospital thing, I guess.
Not fun.
Anyway, not fun. Doesn't sound like fun. And a couple things weren't super fun for the Thunder this year. A couple little nitpicks. 21st in turnover percentage, which, again, when you rely on isolation as much as they do, that's kind of going to be a thing. 21st in the paint true shot attempts, and then they were 28th at corner 3 percentage. But that's because I think most of their best shooters, especially Kevin Durant, primarily functioned at the top of the key or above the break. So not a huge deal. And then defensively, they did give up analytically valuable shots. This is a little bit bigger of a deal. They tied for 25th in defensive XPPS, 24th in mid-range defensive shot attempts. So that means that they didn't give up they did not force teams to shoot mid-range jumpers, and then 28th in above the break 3 attempts against them. So that is a little bit bigger of an issue, I think, than the offensive stuff, but there were a couple little nitpicks.
Yeah, and it's hard to nitpick too much when they have such a crazy, good, young, continuously developing core in place.
Absolutely.
The head of that Hydra, of course, is
the
Kevin
real
Durant.
MVP.
As we mentioned earlier, KD was an extremely worthy MVP.
Mm-hmm.
He is well into a Hall of Fame career in which he has already led the NBA in scoring 4 times, named an All-Star 5 times, and has made the All-NBA first team 5 times. And guess what? This is just his... he's only been in the league for 7 years.
Yeah.
His combination of size, speed, skill, and basketball IQ makes him one of the toughest defensive covers in NBA history.
Mm-hmm.
As he can beat you off the bounce, in the post, on the break, or off the catch.
Yep.
And he's almost 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he just posted one of the most efficient high-volume scoring seasons in NBA history. As I mentioned, he took over 20 shots a game, did so on a 33% usage rate, so a full third of his team's possessions went through him, while shooting a remarkable 63.5 true shooting percentage.
Nuts.
This guy is such an amazing scorer that if he can stay healthy enough to play a long career, he could retire atop Kareem as the NBA's all-time leading scorer.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of this, he can also rebound, pass, and defend too.
Yeah, definitely not a one-dimensional player, and he is absolutely one of the best players I've ever seen, ever, in the history of basketball, ever. One guy who I'm a little hot and cold on, and I think a lot of people are kind of hot and cold on him too, is Russell Westbrook. And to me, he's one of the most frustratingly, extremely talented players in the entire NBA. Elite finishing ability. He can get past pretty much everybody with a great first step, super fast, amazing in transition, can force turnovers like something that forces a lot of turnovers. Hostess factory, I guess? That's a lot of turnovers.
Fair enough, yeah. I like it. I dig it.
Thank you. And he also draws an insane amount of fouls, which has the added bonus of putting opposing big men in foul trouble right away, which helps teams get rid of defensive anchors, and it's like a huge thing that really helps the Thunder out a lot.
Yes.
Russ can ball. Like, a lot of people hate Russ, but the guy can ball. He has skills, he has talent, and the accolades he's received definitely speak for that. Having said that, the guy makes some of the most boneheaded plays I have ever seen anybody ever make, ever, and he does them every single game. It's frustrating. It makes me have an aneurysm. And he does it several times per game. You'll see a bunch of pull-up threes with like 23 seconds on the shot clock. You'll see a bunch of botched rotations. You'll see this aggressive, quote-unquote, defense, which really just gives his man a wide-open lane to the basket. And then when that does happen, he goes for his little playground reach-around instead of trying to get back. It's like, it makes my head want to explode like scanners. And all of this stuff is just par for the course with this dude. So with Russ, you kind of have to take the good with the bad. But no one's going to really be taking much of anything because he's out with a hand fracture for the next couple of weeks.
Yep. One guy who is healthy right now from that aforementioned hydra of super talented young players for the Thunder is Serge Ibaka.
Yep.
He's continued to develop and refine his game over the course of his career, and last season was no different. He saw increases in his points per 36, three-point attempts and three-point percentage, free throw percentage, assist rate, and usage rate, all while decreasing his fouls per game without a major drop-off in his rim protection impact. He's already one of the deadliest mid-range shooters in the entire league, regardless of position. Mm-hmm. And so far this season, he's been launching and hitting from three, shooting 42.1% from three on over 7 attempts a game.
Damn.
In other words, he has a very strong chance of being the floor-spacing defensive linchpin that Will and I dream of seeing wreak havoc on both ends of the court nightly. That's like our ideal player type, is a lights-out, floor-spacing defensive linchpin, and Ibaka is showing that he might get there in the near future.
Yeah, shout out to Rafe LaFrance.
Yes.
One of the guys who gets slept on criminally.
Came into the league too soon. If he came in nowadays, he'd be a lot more appreciated.
Exactly. People say, Ibaka's the first three-point shooting defensive rim protector type. No. There was a guy before that, and basically everybody forgot him.
We might even do a video on this.
We might. Speaking of three-point shooting, this team added Anthony Morrow, who is an elite three-point shooter. He can't really do much else, but he doesn't really have to because dial-on mode is always activated when Anthony Morrow is in the game. Why? Because the dude shoots hot fire! Anyway, the driving kick game between KD and Russ is going to be amazing with Anthony Morrow on the court because they can just do their little isolation or pick and whatever thing and then kick out the ball to Anthony Morrow. It's splash, it's money, it's whatever you want to call it. And then on the other side of that, Morrow can provide the sort of spacing that those kind of guys need to really operate the way they want to. It's a very symbiotic relationship. So all in all, great signing for the Thunder. I think that Anthony Morrow is in a very good spot where he's going to benefit from the players on this roster, and the players on this roster are going to benefit from him.
Yes, he was a great example of what Will and I call elevate guys.
Yes.
And what, in my opinion, one of the best free agent acquisitions this offseason.
Yep.
But he wasn't the Thunder's only acquisition this offseason. They also had the 21st and 29th pick, but 29th pick was kind of interesting.
That's kind of confusing.
Yeah, so we'll skip that for now. But the 21st pick was, I think, somewhat of a steal for them.
I agree.
As they got Mitch McGary from Michigan. He's a very sneaky good pick by Sam Presti here.
I agree.
As he's going to kind of function like a younger, more athletic version of Nick Collison combined with kind of the Thunder's version of Boris Diaw.
Ooh, I like that.
He has shown the ability to Windex both sides of the glass, offensive and defensive. He can get up and down the court very well in transition.
Extremely. He looks like a guard out there.
Exactly. He's a very savvy pick-and-roll big man, capable of being able to time the pick perfectly, dive to the rim, slip the pick when necessary, and he's shown enough of a quality jumper to be a very capable pick-and-pop guy. And most importantly, though, he's really good at passing the ball.
Yes.
You don't see big guys his size that good passing the ball. Think like Josh McRoberts, Boris Diaw type. That said, he'll have to prove it on the NBA level, but he brings a very interesting skill set to this Thunder team, and that versatile skill set base is really going to benefit the Thunder for the long term, I think. But, unfortunately, like a lot of Thunder players right now, he's not able to benefit them currently because he is out with an injury, in this case, a broken left foot.
Yep. I think that's going to be really cool, though. I love that he's getting mentored by Nick Collison.
Agreed.
That's going to be awesome. One thing that's not awesome is that this team lost Thabo Sefolosha.
Yep.
Most people think of this guy as a sort of 3 and D guy, but last year Thabo was more of just a regular D guy because he only shot 32% from 3. Having said that, Oklahoma City's offense kind of stagnant a little bit, so I can get why that percentage would go down. Thabo's been a member of the Thunder. Do you call him a Thunder? It's kind of like the Magic. Do I call him a Thunder? I don't know what I call him. A Thunder player.
There you go.
For a pretty long time now. And he's going to definitely be missed, especially with his perimeter defense.
Yeah. Another thing that the Thunder might miss this year is rest.
Yeah.
There's a thing we like to track here when it's impactful called rest differential. And all it is basically looking at a team over the course of the season in comparison to their opponents in regards to how many road back-to-backs, 3 games in 4 nights, and 4 games in 5 nights they play.
Right.
So a positive rest differential indicates that you're more rested over the course of the season than your opponents. A negative, the opposite. There's negative 24, which when you factor in their injury problems to start the season, that is very problematic. And a lot of research has been coming out more and more recently showing how important rest is to performance. So when you factor in those injury issues and this rest differential, the Thunder are kind of starting the season off behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we do so that we're not behind the 8 ball is a segment we like to call 5 Questions. And in this segment, Josh and I ask each other, 5 questions about things we otherwise probably wouldn't have been able to get to. So, Josh, you have the first question. Hit me, man.
Yeah, so we already know that Steven Adams is the Thunder's center of the future. But is he also the center of now?
Well, considering that the other main center is Kendrick Perkins and Hasheem Thabeet's gone, yeah, probably, whether you like it or not. And he seems to be a pretty solid candidate for that. You know, the guy, I think he's pretty underrated as a sort of rim protector. At least, maybe not an elite rim protector, but he's decent at it. A solid post defender, sets amazing illegal screens that nobody ever calls. Is a decent post scorer, decent touch around the basket. He's got a lot of things going for him. And I think that Steven Adams is definitely the center of the now, just simply because, like we mentioned before, the scarcity of that skill set combined with other deficiencies on the roster, perhaps. And he had a really solid rookie year. He put up, let me pull it up right quick. Okay, yeah. So it was only 3.3 points, and he did foul a lot. But he blocked decently, didn't turn the ball over very much, and rebounded very well. And all of that was in a rookie year. And
he got, on top of that, he also got at least one opponent irritation a game.
Yeah.
Where he
led the league in irritations per 48.
Yes, exactly. He's the pest.
So right now he's averaging about 8 and 8 with a block, and that's in about 29 minutes per game. His turnovers are a little bit down. He does need to work on staying out of foul trouble. But he's a 21-year-old big, and but as far as 21-year-old bigs go, he is definitely in the upper echelon.
Yeah.
Speaking of the upper echelon, this team's offensive system is not in the upper echelon in terms of complexity and ball movement and player movement. But do you think that it's good enough for this team to win a championship?
If everyone is healthy, throughout the playoffs, it is good enough to get them at least to the precipice of a championship. Problem is, the past several seasons, they've had injuries to one of their 3 heads of the Hydra, as mentioned earlier. And in the playoffs, when teams have much more preparation time between games, and when you're only focused on a singular opponent, you can really hone in on preventing primary and sometimes even secondary actions offensively for your opponents. When you're a team that relies very heavily on ISOs and pick and rolls and basically just individual generated offense instead of more of a free-flowing team systematic offense, you become easier to scout. So it's much easier for opponents of the Thunder in the playoffs to just hone in on denying KD the ball and forcing Russ to have to make something happen with very little time left on the clock, likely forcing him to take a tough shot, which plays into what Russ likes to do anyway. So it does make them a little easier to game plan for in the playoffs. But KD, Russ, and Ibaka are so damn good that if all 3 are healthy throughout a playoffs, they could get to the finals and, depending on matchups, win it. So technically it is, but I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of the offensive system in place and think they would have a much better shot at winning if they introduced a little more off-ball movement of players and also swung the ball a bit more.
Agreed. You know, I think it's pretty telling and not at all a coincidence that Oklahoma City and Indiana both have kind of similar offenses in this regard.
Yep.
And we had a San Antonio-Miami finals.
Yeah. So part of the reason why the Thunder haven't been back to the finals, at least narratively speaking, especially from a particularly famous basketball enthusiast, part of the reason they haven't been back to the finals is they traded James Harden, who was their 6th man, but was looking for a pay raise and an increase in his role after making the finals. And we know how that's kind of played out, but now the Thunder find themselves in a somewhat similar situation with Reggie Jackson, which, as Will mentioned earlier, with Russell missing almost half the season, Reggie Jackson really stepped up and was a very consistent scoring option for the Thunder. But like Harden, he seems to not necessarily want to be a 6th man going forward. He wants to be a starter. He's been very vocal about it, but not necessarily going to be one with Russ in the way. So what is Reggie Jackson going to do this offseason, and are the Thunder going to keep him?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff involved here. So the big thing is that you have the ownership group for Oklahoma City headed by Clay Bennett, if I'm correct. Yeah, you're not a fan. I don't blame you. They don't want to go into the luxury tax. They really do not want to go into the luxury tax. And I could add a few more reallys onto that. And if Reggie Jackson gets to ball out and get 18.8 shots per game like he is right now, he is going to put up the box score numbers necessary to really warrant a pretty hefty sort of salary. Probably, almost definitely in double figures.
Yes.
And probably 12, 13 wouldn't be too shocking.
Yeah.
So, obviously, with Russ out and with Russ having an injury history, I don't know. He might wind up finishing the year averaging like 17-7, 17-8 as a 6th man, maybe win 6th man of the year. Some crazy stuff could happen. And he would be a pretty hefty contract. And I'm not so certain about how the Thunder, given their sort of stinginess with the dinero, would feel about that. So I'm not sure. I think that he gets an offer sheet in that $12-13 million range, and he's going to sign it, and he wants to be a starter. With that in mind, with the Thunder knowing that, I wouldn't be surprised if he walked.
I wouldn't be 100% surprised, but given that we know the cap is going to rise, and with it the luxury tax is going to rise over the next several years, it's conceivable that the Thunder might match a relatively reasonable contract offer. That doesn't preclude a team from offering him something akin to the Chandler Parsons deal that Dallas gave, which wasn't just tough for Houston to match because Houston was trying to make sure they could still trade him if need be later. The reason they deemed that contract untradeable and why they didn't match it wasn't so much the fact that it was pretty much near max deal. It was because there's a player option after the second year, and it was only a 3-year deal, which means it'd be tough to trade him and really drive up a market for that when the team acquiring him would have a very short period of time to kind of make the proper relationship take place where he might stay with them and, you know, pick up that option and play that third year. So I could see something like that happening with Reggie Jackson. But like you said, I also wouldn't be too surprised if next year he's not a Thunder player.
Yeah. The naming of Thunder players in the demographic is a bit of a distraction for us in this preview, but will it be as big of a distraction as the media circus around Kevin Durant's 2016 free agency will be for the Thunder team?
No. So considering that just before filming this, I did a quick Google search of just Kevin Durant free agency. It returned 3.9 million results.
Yeah.
And you factor in that it will be the 2016 offseason when he will be eligible to be a free agent. And that's also the year the cap is supposed to jump. And so many teams are already trying to plan to have cap space in 2016 precisely for the possibility of wooing Kevin Durant. I could see the media making this a major circus.
Well, because it is a major circus.
To a degree, yes. Part of this, though, is a really flawed media narrative in a lack of understanding how the CBA works. We've seen countless stories come up about, oh, they might have to trade this guy, or they really have to figure this out because he might leave in free agency because he won't sign an extension. The way the CBA is set up right now, no player, except those that are currently on a rookie scale contract, no player will sign an extension right now because it doesn't make financial sense for them. It limits the number of years they can lock in, and if they just wait till they're a free agent and re-sign with whichever team holds their bird rights, they stand to make a lot more money that way. So a lot of this is going to be driven by, oh, well, KD, there's extension talks going on, but KD's not really thinking about extending. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean KD is necessarily going to want to leave. It just means he's trying to make the best decision for himself.
Yep.
So that said, it's still going to be a major circus because, in large part, everybody else is planning on pitching KD the second that clock turns midnight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that media frenzy is going to be pretty crazy, as is the current injury issues with this team. And given how crazy the injury issues are right now for the Thunder, especially with KD and Russ out for significant time.
Mm-hmm.
Can they play as amazingly lights out once those guys return as they will need to in order to make up what's going to be a likely poor record by that point to make the playoffs in what is an insanely tough Western Conference?
I mean, yeah, it's been pretty much the same team for a couple of years now, and if everyone gets back together, it's going to be pretty same old, same old. It's a pretty simple offense. They didn't do too much to change it up, so it's not like there's going to be too much adaptation that needs to go on. Obviously, there's always rust, and there's always the potential to re-aggravate an injury, which could definitely happen. That would be very unfortunate. But I think, for one, the current... what is their record right now? Let me pull that up right quick. 2-6. The current 2-6 record, it's a bit of an over-exaggeration to how bad this team is, I think, because only 6 players have played in more than 5 of those games.
Yeah.
They have been banged up like crazy. So I think they're better than 2-6. You know, and a lot of that is sample size. The question is, can those role players also stay healthy and not re-aggravate anything? Because if that winds up happening, and then the role players go down, and Russ goes down again, or KD goes down again, they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I mean, we might not be making the playoffs because we're not a team, but hopefully our 20, 50, 80 previews pay off. See what I did there?
Yeah.
It was very forced and contrived. But our predictions are not. 20, 50, 80 is our predictions for the season for this team. 20% likely to happen, 50% likely to happen. You get what the 80 would mean. Josh, fire away.
So, even despite all the stuff we just mentioned, I think it's 20% likely the Thunder make the NBA Finals this year. Yep. They have the potential to, if they get healthy and maybe wind up in like the 6th or 7th playoff spot, to be able to very easily, if those main core 3 guys are healthy at the time, take out a top 2-3 seed in the first round and make it all the way to the finals. The reason it's only 20% is the aforementioned problems.
Plus the Spurs.
And the Spurs, yes. I think it's 50% likely that this time next year, Reggie Jackson is not a member of this team.
Nope. We talked about that.
Yep. And I think it's 80% likely, and you guys could probably tell, given my attire and the jersey behind me, that as much as I love Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, Nick Collison, and several other Thunder players, I'm never going to be able to root for them. I can't do it.
I feel about Clay Bennett the same way Masai Ujiri feels about Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thing. If you guys haven't seen it before, I highly recommend checking out Sonics Gate, a Requiem for a Team. We'll post the link below our video, and give it a look, and you'll see why myself and several other NBA fans from the Pacific Northwest have a real problem with Clay Bennett and rooting for the OKC Zombie Sonics.
Yep. The coach of the Zombie Sonics is Scott Brooks, and I think it's 20% likely that he gets fired by the end of the season. I know.
I don't think it'll happen, but...
That's why I don't think it'll happen either. That's why I said 20%.
I know. I think it's less. It's more like 5% than 20%, but I'll give it to you.
I mean, I've seen crazier things happen. I've seen Rick Carlisle get ran out of Detroit.
It's not going to happen, though. They love Scott Brooks.
They're going to miss if they do miss the playoffs.
Even if they miss the playoffs, they're not going to chalk it up to Scott Brooks and force him.
Okay, if they get into the playoffs and they underperform, this team has been The team hasn't been reaching this whole finals title sort of expectation for a while now, especially after the James Harden thing. And like you've mentioned, a lot of this stuff is about dealing with expectations. And so far, Scott Brooks is not meeting their expectations of getting to the finals and competing for a title.
To be fair, Will, factoring in that last year Ibaka missed games during the Western Conference playoffs and the previous season Russell missed games, I'm not so sold that they think Scott Brooks, their underperformance to expectations was because of Scott Brooks' coaching, which you and I might be more inclined to believe, so much as it was just poor circumstances health-wise. So I get your point. I just disagree on the fervor with which it is stated.
Okay. I think that it's 50% likely that the Thunder miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
In this stacked Western Conference. Right now they are 2-6. There are a bunch of injury concerns. When there are injury concerns, there are re-aggravation concerns. And
they had a negative rest differential.
For those, makes that re-aggravation more likely. Thanks for pointing that out. So even if they can come back and win 48, 49, 50 games, that might not be enough.
Yep.
And then I think that it's 80% likely that the Thunder lose KD or Russ by the 2017 offseason. Russ becomes a free agent in the 2017 offseason. LA apparently is gung-ho on the guy.
Russ, of course, went to UCLA.
Yeah. You've heard about Kevin Durant and the Wizards, and everyone and their uncle wants to sign him. And I just think that it's very unlikely that one of those two guys doesn't wind up walking, just because it's pretty rare for any two players to stay with the team for so long.
I don't know if I would even nearly go to 80%, but I'm also inclined to think that one of those guys might not be here by the time the 2017 season rolls around. I'm more inclined to think that it's Russ than
Agreed.
KD, but
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And we both seem to agree on whether or not this team's going to be good.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be good, but they want to be great, and they're not.
And I think that if they're healthy, they are easily one of the best teams in the entire NBA, but health is obviously a major issue right now for them. And they're in this ridiculously tough Western Conference. And I think it's very likely, like Will said in his 50-50, they could well fall out of the playoffs this year.
Yeah. If you think that this video fell out of the playoffs, there is a thumbs down button, but we hope you hit the thumbs up button because you liked it. Fingers crossed. Either way you felt about it, leave a comment down below saying how you felt about this video or how you feel about this Oklahoma City Thunder team. If you like this video, consider sharing it with your friends on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, whatever.
Carrier pigeon.
Carrier pigeon, Morse code. And additionally, don't forget to subscribe if you want to be notified of our future videos. I think that's a wrap, guys. Thank you very much for watching.
Bring the Sonics back to Seattle.